Hello, my name is Terry Kenny, and I'm a surface water specialist with the Water Science Field Team. The intent of this demonstration is to simply give you an overview of GRSAT. We'll discuss how to work with the various panes that are inside of GRSAT, and we'll explain the general content of those panes. Many other functions of GRSAT will be introduced in other screencast videos as part of this Surface Water Rating Curves HydroTube series. After viewing this demonstration, you should feel comfortable with the interface of GRSAT and be able to recognize where all the various pieces of data are stored and how to find them. Data used in GRSAT to develop ratings and shifts is no different than the data used in hand development, nor is the basic process of developing a rating any different in GRSAT. Thus, using GRSAT is simply a matter of learning how the material is stored and gaining familiarity with the tools. I have launched the GRSAT application, and now I need to load some data to work with. I go to File and Open. And as you can see here, I have two options. I can load data from the database, or I can load data from the file. In an operational environment, you will typically be using the From Database button. This then launches middleware that talks to ADAPS. For information on the middleware and a demonstration, please view the Surface Water Rating Curves HydroTube video, GRSAT ADAPS middleware. For this overview demonstration of GRSAT, we are simply going to load a file by using the From File button shown here. And we're going to navigate to the Introduction primer shown here. I'm going to open it, and then I see a bunch of data that was part of that file that's shown here. We have a number of ratings that are loaded. We have a number of shifts that are loaded. Now, if you were working from the database, this would be information that you asked the database to grab and load into GRSAT. I'm going to click the Read Data button. And you will see we have a GRSAT session open with a variety of information loaded in it. The typical view you're going to want to see when you're working with ratings and shifts is what we call the default rating shift layout, which you can always go to by clicking on the View tab at the top and selecting Default Rating Shift Layout. And you'll notice some of the panes changed from how they looked when we initially loaded this information. Now we have a series of panes inside of this giant window that takes up our screen. We have what we call the General Overview pane, which is shown here, that contains the rating curve, measurements, and potentially shifts, as shown here by this blue line, for the site that we loaded. We have what we call the Site Visit data pane, shown here, with tabs on the bottom to also display the rating table pane, which has the rating table input values and some other information, including the offset and slope of different segments of the rating curve. Further to the right, we have the Rating Period Manager, which gives us the dates that certain ratings are active. We also have what's known as the Offset Manager tab down here, which allows us to work with offsets in the rating, for the rating. And we have a Shift Manager that then also allows us to work and define shift curves and the dates for shift curves for the active rating. Down here at the bottom left, we have what we call the Rating Zoom 1 window. Currently, we're not zoomed into the main rating shown on the overview pane here, but if we were to zoom in on this overview by clicking on the Zoom 1 region button shown here with the magnifying glass with the 1 over it, we can draw a box around part of the rating curve in the overview pane, which then shows a blue box that indicates what we are looking at down here in the Rating Zoom 1 window. We can grab this panning tool right here, this hand, in the overview pane, and move that zoom around, which is then dynamically changed in the Rating Zoom 1 pane shown on the lower left. Rating Zoom 1 is in log scaling. And if you click on Rating Zoom 2 on the bottom left, that tab, you'll see an arithmetic or rectangular plotting of the rating curve as well. Similar to Rating Zoom 1, I can click on the Draw Zoom 2 region in the overview pane, and draw another box around a portion of the rating curve in the overview pane, which is defined by a red box that I can also move around by using the panning hand shown here. But this red box indicates where I'm zooming in on the rating for the rating zoom to, or the arithmetic or rectangular scaling rating zoom button. I also have what's known as a time series view down here in the lower left, which is just that. It has the time series of data that I loaded when I initiated this GRSAT session. And when working with rating curves, you're going to have the discharge time series data loaded, not stage or gauge height. You'll notice that there's measurements that are plotted in the time series view and discharge values time series shown here. We have down below a series of bars in the time series that indicate when certain ratings are active, when they're approved, or when they're working. We have information related to shift curves and how they are applied and when they are applied. And we also have aging status shown as well in the time series view. On the lower right, we have the variable shift diagram pane, which has stage on the y-axis and the amount of shift on the x-axis. The rating is represented by this 0 shift line shown here. In this pane, we're looking at a number of discharge measurements with error bars and a single shift shown here in blue. You'll notice that the overall environment of GRSAT is very similar to that of any other Windows-based computer program, with a number of menu options at the top that you can click and pull down, and icons that can then be used to trigger different functions within the program itself. Something you'll learn and notice right away is that most of the functions in GRSAT can be initiated or triggered multiple ways. For example, we can call up any of these various panes shown here by these icons, by hovering over them, finding out what they are. But we can also go to View and trigger them the same way here by pulling it down and selecting them. Now, this overview is not going to go over every single button within the program itself. We'll highlight a few of them, but generally speaking, you can hover over any button and find out what it is that it's calling up. You'll notice in the overview pane, we have a few tabs located at the top that have different ratings in them. Right now, we are viewing stage discharge rating 20.0, but I can click on a tab here and view rating number 19.0. You'll notice many of the windows change when I initiate that tab, and I can do the same for rating 18.0. We're going to be looking at this rating 20.0 throughout the rest of this demonstration, so I'll click on it here, and things change. I am going to go to View Default Rating Shift Layout because that's what I want to kind of show you as we move along here. We can always find out information about this specific rating by clicking on Setup, clicking on the rating option here, and we can see various amounts of information specific to this rating itself, the name of the site, what kind of a rating it is, its rating code, rating type being logarithmic, potentially you can have linear or standard equation, and the rating number. Remarks that were made when this rating was developed are also shown here. You'll notice that the aging code of this rating is working. It can be edited, and you could also figure that out by looking down here at the bottom and seeing aging code W as well. Similarly, in the rating period manager, you'll see rating 20.0 has a parentheses with a W in it. That means that it's working as well. Like I said, many things can be seen and triggered using multiple different options within the program itself. So I'm going to cancel out of here. That was just information on the rating setup. Before going into a general overview of each pane, I want to explain how these panes work and how you can move them, resize them, undock them, and that sort of thing. Aside from the overview pane, all these other panes can be grabbed and moved around. For example, I can pull this site visit data pane, drag it out, drop it right in front of me, resize it if I want, and you'll notice that the overview pane just moved over into the little void space that was located there. Regardless of what you do, you can always go back to that initial view. So I can go to View, Default Rating Shift Layout, and everything goes where I like it. Taking this a little bit further, I can grab any of these panes again, and you'll notice these blue arrows show up at the top, to the right, below, and to the left, as well as a series of arrows right in the middle. And this allows me to dock this pane anywhere that these arrows are located. For example, on the left here, if I drag over that left arrow, it puts that site visit data pane all the way to the left, and the rest of the panes resize themselves. I could completely close the site visit data pane by clicking on the X here. And it's gone, and you'll notice that the rating table pane, which was an optional tab inside of this pane, came up again. I can click on an X and close that. And it's gone now. You really can't see it. You can't figure out where it went. You can always go over here at the top into these different panes, icons, and find it and reload it. So here's my site visit data button. I click on that. It shows back up where I docked it last. The tab that was there before, I can click on rating table, and it's there again by clicking on that icon. And I can toggle between these two. You can move and relocate panes as you desire. If you have multiple monitors, you can drag entire panes out and stick them in those monitors to aid in spreading out and looking at all the data that you can. I'm going to go back to View, Default Rating Shift Layout. This is something you're going to do all the time because you move stuff around. You want to get back to where you are. Now that behavior, like I said, can be done for any of these other panes. You can resize any of the windows and panes as you see fit by grabbing in between them and moving things over. If I wanted to move this Zoom 1 pane up, I can just move it up, and everything kind of resizes itself. Aside from moving the various panes into different locations or docking them in different locations, I also have the ability to pin them to different parts of the screen. For example, you'll see this little tack here for the Rating Zoom 1 pane. If I click on it, it looks like it disappears. But if you notice, on the very bottom, there's the same tabs that were available in that window pane. So I click on Rating Zoom 1, and it pops back up. You'll notice the pin is now sideways, and if I click on that, it's going to go back to where it was. Different panes get pinned to different locations on the screen. For example, the Offset Manager, Shift Manager, Rating Period Manager pane, if I click Pin, shows up on the right side of the screen. And again, I can click here, and I can either pin it back or unpin it, or going back here, I can just use it when I want to use it, look at it, click off of it, it goes away. Now I'm going to go back and go to my default rating shift layout just because that's where I'm comfortable, and you'll be doing that quite often. And we can discuss a few of the functionalities in the different panes, those that you'll be using the most. Starting with the overview pane, the auto scale button here does just that. Scales all the graphical windows to the overview. And now you have a full view of the rating in the rating zoom window. The next button is the undo zoom button, and that just takes you back to an unzoomed view. So if I clicked on zoom 1, you can see down below I'm zoomed in. Again, here's what I'm zoomed into. And if I click undo zoom, it goes back to that full view look. I already covered the zoom 1 and zoom 2. Here we have a sheep. It's the clone rating button. You're going to see that in action in many of the other videos of this HydroTube series, so I'm not going to cover it here. And we have the ability here to add an overlaid rating. So if I click on this button, I have a chance to overlay a different rating curve for viewing purposes onto this rating curve. I also have the ability to overlay shifts related to that rating curve. So if you recall, when we pulled in this data, we loaded a number of rating curves shown here in the tab in the overview window. We have rating 18, 19, and we're looking at 20. So here we're in 20, we want to add an overlaid rating. So I'm going to select rating number 19, and I'm not going to overlay a shifted rating curve because we're not going to cover that here, but you do have the ability to overlay a shifted rating curve. And I'm going to change the color to, I don't know, green, and I'm going to overlay this rating. And you can see there are some small differences between rating 19 and rating 20. Let's zoom in real quick at the upper end here, and you'll see down here in the zoom window, the rating number 19 is green, and it's slightly different from rating number 20 shown in red. You'll notice the button next to it was initially gray, but now that we have overlaid a rating, we have a button that allows us to remove an overlaid rating. So I'm going to click on that, and of course I'm going to remove rating number 19. And it's going to ask me, and I'm going to say yes, I would like to remove it. And it's gone. Let's go to our View Default Shift Rating Layout. And the next buttons that are shown have to deal with showing or hiding measurements or rating input points. So this first one, if I hover over it, it says Show Hide Measurements, and I can click on that, and the measurements are not shown. And those are only measurements that are selected. Now let's get those back. And then we have the ability to show or hide unselected measurements. Now we haven't shown you what an unselected measurement is, so I'm going to briefly go over that. If I go into the site visit data pane, I have the ability to select measurements, which are the ones shown with the check boxes, or unselect measurements. So real quick, I'm going to grab a whole bunch of these, drag down, click the X, and they turn gray on the rating curves and everywhere else within GRSAT. Now, these are some that I would have filtered out as I'm developing a rating. This will be covered in other video series or other videos of the series, but I'm just showing you real quick. You have the ability to show or hide those gray values, so they're kind of out of your way and you don't have to really worry about them. It's kind of a nice little feature there. And then finally, you have the ability to show or hide the actual rating points. So they're gone. The rating curve is still shown, the line. So if I were to show and hide, I was to hide my measurements, I just have the rating curve and an active shift curve shown here. Pretty interesting. So I'm going to go back in and reselect all these measurements just to make it simple. Drag down. There's other ways to select, unselect. You can do it graphically, and view rating shift layout, and unzoom, and we are back to where we were. Moving in a clockwise fashion, let's go over to the site visit data pane, which also includes the rating table information. And I undocked it. I'm going to make it a little bit larger, and I kind of already showed you what we can do in here. But just real quick, this is where we have the ability to select and unselect measurements that are plotted in our graphical panes. And we have the ability to do a number of ways to sort the different columns here. So any one of these columns can be sorted by clicking on them, and you'll see how they sort. See, here's by date, youngest to oldest, vice versa. And I can do the same with time. I can sort it by stage, etc. Obviously, we can scroll up or down here on the right to let us know where we're at. And we have the ability to select or unselect measurements. I showed you the click and drag. I can do a click, shift. Again, everything in between is highlighted, and I can unselect those, and I can reselect those. I can do all sorts of things over here. You're going to work in this window quite a bit as you are developing ratings and shifts to unselect and select measurements to be seen to be used as you develop your rating. Now I can click on the tab down here. This is the rating table. These are the descriptor points, those that are shown as blue triangles in the various rating windows. So here we have a rating descriptor point here. You can delete them by highlighting one, clicking X. You can insert a point by clicking on a value you're interested in, and you can insert a point above it or insert a point below it. And you do that manually by typing things in. For example, at this lower end, this rating descriptor point here, I'm going to delete it. And it is gone. And you'll see the rating line disappeared here as well. I'm going to see if I can undo that and get it back, and I can. The undo function in GRSAT only goes back one step, and it's only related to actions made to the rating itself. For example, if you zoomed or you wanted to unzoom or go back a few zooms, you can't do that with the undo button. Just something to keep in mind. So let's go to our default view and move right along. The next pane, the rating period manager shown here, has the dates for when ratings are active. You can see here's the rating number, 17, 18, 19, 19 shown twice because we have different working periods, and then the start and end dates for those rating periods. When you load information from ADAPS, every single rating period that is inside the system, inside ADAPS, gets pulled up here regardless of the fact that you pulled up the rating that was associated with it. And those rating periods in which there is no rating within GRSAT in that session are grayed out. So you remember we loaded 18, 19, and 20, and the rating periods associated with those measurements is not grayed out, but we have a rating period associated with rating 17, and it's gray because we do not have rating 17 shown here in the overview pane. So there are two other tabs in the manager pane. We have the offset manager, and here's where we can toggle the offset for the rating and decide which offset we're going to be plotting. Now these will be covered. There's two other surface water rating curves, HydroTube series offset videos. There's one on single offsets and there's one on multiple offsets. So we're not going to cover how things change here. I just wanted to show you the manager itself. And we have the shift manager here. The shift manager is where you define the actual shape of the shift curve with inputted gauge heights and the shift amount here. And that is shown as well graphically down in the variable shift diagram plot here. You also have the ability here in the shift manager to assign it in time, apply the shift in time. So you can double click any shift that's up there and decide when it starts and if you want to actually assign an end date to it. This is also where you would set remarks. To add a new shift in, you can insert it above or below an existing shift, or you can highlight a shift and hit the clone button and go from there. You have the ability to remove shifts by just deleting them after they're highlighted. When defining your shift curve input points and the amount of shift, you have different options. You can type in the value inside here, or you can use these radio buttons to toggle them up or toggle them down. And just like anywhere you see a radio button inside GRSAT, you have the ability to set the step, how much it increases or decreases by clicking on one of these buttons. So for example, here for the inputted gauge heights, I have the ability to, or as it's set up now, it steps up a tenth if I click on the radio button. So it goes to 8.1 from 8. If I toggle it down, it goes back to 8. Moving right along into the variable shift diagram pane, I'm going to pull this out just to make it a little bit simpler to look at. I have an auto scale button that's auto scales. Obviously, everything's already auto scaled, but I can do that. I have the undo the zoom, and I have the ability to zoom in here, so I can zoom into different places, and I can zoom out. I can move a shift point. So that shift that's highlighted over here in the shift manager, the blue one, is shown. The actual shift curve is shown here, and I can zoom in on where the input points are here. And you can see that there's these little stars, which is where the inputted values are. I have the ability to just grab one of those and move it wherever I want, up or down or side to side. But I can also limit myself to be able to just move it vertically or horizontally. So here's the horizontal button. I click on that, I grab this point, and I can only move it side to side. I can't move it up or down. And similarly, we have the ability to move it just vertically and not side to side. And so I'm clicked on that tool, and I can't move it side to side, but I can move it up and down. Pretty handy stuff. I also have the ability to show or hide the error bars. Sometimes it helps clean things up. Although when you're dealing with developing shift curves, you're going to want those error bars on because they provide some guidance on where that shift curve should go. So let's tuck that back into its place. We'll go to our default layout. Everything's back where it is. And we'll go to the final pane that we're going to cover here. And this is a pane you're going to be working in quite a bit, because this is where you have the ability to graphically change rating input points and that sort of thing. So it's got a lot of the same tools that you saw everywhere else. You have the undo zoom button, which you've already covered, and the zoom button. You have the ability to unselect all measurements. This just unselects all the measurements that are shown, and you can reselect them again. You have the ability to discretely select and unselect measurement points. So let's unselect a few graphically by just drawing a box around them. They turn gray. And then again, you could go up here in the overview and you could show or hide unselected measurements, and they're gone. And you have the ability to select measurement points. So we can bring these right back by drawing a box around them. Two really handy tools. We have this ability to input a series of descriptor points. We're not going to cover that in this intro. You have the ability to actually draw rating points. You draw a line and a series of points come up. You have the ability to add rating points. You'll use this quite a bit, where you would select this and you could just add a point up here and you have a new rating point. We can move rating points. So I could grab that rating point by clicking on this move rating point button, and I can move it up. I can't move it any further down than the previous, or just above the previous rating point, because we don't have ratings that decrease in gauge height as the discharge increases. And I can move it out or move it around. I can skip 2 points here and go to the delete rating point, and I can draw a box around it, and it's gone. And I have what's known as a extend the rating line tool, shown with this little arrow. And there is an entire hydrotube video for this surface water rating curve series that deals with extending ratings, and that will be covered in that one. And there are some curve fitting tools that you may find useful at times, but generally speaking, we're going to input points in straight lines and then add points in the transitions. And you have the ability to compute slope for different segments of the line. So this is kind of a neat little tool. So I can click on compute slope, and I can draw a box around the segment I'm interested in, and it will give me a slope and give me a hint as to what type of hydraulic control we're dealing with. And so for this one, it suggests that we are under section control. Kind of neat. And a neat little verifier. And just like I was able to do in the variable shift diagram over here, I can move rating or shift points inside of the zoom window. So I can click on that tool and the points show up. Let me zoom into a point just to show you how it's done. And so there is a inputted rating point here. It's where it merges into the rating. And I can select this move shift point, and I can either grab it and go up the curve, across the curve, wherever I want to go. But it kind of limits me. I can either go side to side with it, or if I have the diamond, I can go up the rating curve, up in gauge height. So it's kind of a neat little tool. You'll find that fairly useful. Let's zoom out, turn that tool off, and move on to the rating zoom 2, which has the same tools. It's just showing you in arithmetic scales. Nothing really new to talk about there, but you have the same ability to change and move and add and subtract rating input points. And then finally, the time series view, which we kind of already talked about, which has the discharge values last computed in ADAPS. There's no computation inside of GRSAT, so it was what was last run with a primary when you pulled the data in. There's a few more things I want to show you, but understand I have not covered all the functionality within GRSAT, and you will have the opportunity on your own to look at different options that exist, find out different ways to do some of these functions. You're able to deal with changing colors and setting the properties as you see fit by clicking on some of these properties buttons shown here, usually with a pencil, and you have the ability to change a number of things on the plots. Again, you see one down here in the shift diagram, and you see one here in the overview, and if I were to go to the rating zoom, you'd have it there as well. You will also be able to go here to setup, into view, and you can deal with default graph properties. And there's a number of things you can change. I'm not going to cover that sort of stuff. The last thing I really want to show you is the ability to pull a expanded rating table by this button right here. You're able to look at the rating that you've got here, rating 20, right, shown here, and I can look at a shifted rating at a specific point in time if I was interested, or I can just pull the base rating, which is typically what we look at, and I would click OK, and a expanded rating table, just like we're used to seeing out of ADAPS, pops up here with our stage values and then the incremental expansion of the stage values here, and then the corresponding discharges shown here. Notice that input points, this lower input point right here at 3.80 and 7.3 cubic feet per second is denoted with an asterisk. And if you look through these expanded rating tables, you'll find a series of other asterisk discharges, and those are directly related to the triangles here, as well as the values in here in the rating table itself. Like I've said numerous times throughout this demonstration, there are other videos in this HydroTube series that cover different aspects of developing ratings and working with GRSAT that I encourage you to look at, and you will see more functionality, and you will see the functionality put to real use cases and real scenarios. Thank you very much.